Good morning and welcome to the first of a series of webinars in 2022, our Women in BIM Demystifying Digital Twins. Now, this webinar comes with us at a very important time for our industry, especially because obviously there's been an uptake and an resurgence almost in this topic. And I'll explain a little bit about why this is important to women in BIM shortly. But my name's Rebecca, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the chair of Women in BIM. I'm also the principal for digital enablement across Oricon, and I will give you, I guess, a little bit of a background to start with across the first 10 minutes before we move into our exciting lineup of panelists today. And before I forget, I would like to thank the panelists formally. They're all very busy women for attending and speaking at our webinar today. So thank you very much for your attendance and welcome. So to start with, I'd like to give you, I guess, a little bit of background as to Women in BIM, our journey, and really our initiatives and progress to date. Today, obviously, we will be focusing on a particular topic, but I do hope you do enjoy this first series of slides, which will give you a little bit of insight into Women in BIM that you don't or you might not know about. So to start with, really, we'd like to thank our sponsors. We have had a great intake of sponsors across our group over the last 12 months. So our sponsors for 2021 for Women in BIM were Glider BIM and i3PT across UK and Europe, and Oricon GHD and Mott MacDonald across APAC or Asia Pacific. What I'd like to do is just remind everyone that Women in BIM is a charity. We effectively are not-for-profit that runs as a global organisation. So without the help from our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to obviously do as much as we do. So we are currently looking at welcoming 2022 sponsors, and although not formally announced, some of the companies listed here are continuing their support to Women in BIM in 2022. We're always looking for more support. So if you are interested, please follow the link and let us know. The Women in BIM Global team, founded in 2012, many of you know that the initiative is very much a response to what was happening over in the UK. So I did spend a lot of time in the UK working as obviously a business owner and working toward developing skills and initiatives around diversity and inclusion when it comes to digital. And our global team are now very much a global team that support women in BIM. So we have representatives that are very much acting as, I guess, the core group that initiate all of our activities and all of our communications, as well as all of our events, such as today's event. So I'd like to thank the core team that are listed here. But we also have wider representation now across Asia Pacific. And we are very excited that only in the last week, we've actually promoted, and we continue to promote, the fact that we have a strong presence across Australia now, with regional leads acting across 5 of our states, which is wonderful. We also have regional leads across Asia and New Zealand, as you can see here. Now, Women in BIM very much are an initiative that support the global construction industry in their uptake and initiation or areas of industry that look at 3 key areas. Firstly, obviously, to support and encourage each other. Secondly, to attract and promote women in BIM-related roles. And finally, to advance and retain. And without going into too much detail around these 3 objectives and core drivers, Women in BIM very much focus our activities and our projects around these 3 streams, which has effectively been going on for almost 10 years. But this goes wider for us. We're very interested in achieving gender equality, not just in the construction industry, but obviously as a wider initiative on a global level. Really, we want to see more women moving into quite senior roles and roles in government. And women's equal participation isn't just an important area for women in BIM, but acts as a core driver for the United Nations and their sustainability goals, which effectively have key processes that are in place to support the uptake and growth of women and gender equality, really, across the world in different areas. So our numbers continue to grow. We have a great following across the world in terms of our membership and our social media. And we also have, more recently, which is amazing, really built our community on a global level. So we have what we call regional leads, and they are women positioned in their respective areas of the world that are supporting the uptake of digital construction, digital engineering, BIM, etc., across 30 different countries. And this continues to grow. We're seeing that this is continuing to grow as we, I guess, expand and grow and gain visibility really across the world. And our most, I was going to say most important, but one of our most important projects is our Women in BIM Mentor Scheme. This is the 3rd year we've run our mentor scheme, and mentoring is such a key component to what we do. We find that there are so many young women that are looking for that level of support. And as you can see here, we have had quite a strong growth in terms of the numbers that are represented. And apologies for the year here, but this is actually supposed to read 2022. So we actually have had 117 Mentee applications in 2022 versus, I guess, the 85 last year. So you can see that that is a 50% increase, as well as our mentees. We also have had a number of new, I guess, or a growth in mentor applications as well this year. Not so high as we would like to see, but certainly the numbers are growing. We're also very fortunate that we have grown the number of countries represented this year in terms of the applications. So we have 43 companies represented in our applications, and we also have a number of matches that will be made. So at the moment, we're consolidating our mentor applications, and we'll be releasing all of our information relating to the next steps through our mailing list. So please keep in touch. So this brings us to today's session. So Women in BIM have a strong position, and we effectively, as the chair, I wrote an article only recently around the fact that there is a resurgence and an uptake rather globally around the terminologies and the concepts of a digital twin. Now, at present, there is a lack of probably of consistent knowledge when it comes to that, and that's me being very kind, I think. But there's effectively many people across the world and in industry that are really struggling to get their head around what that actually means. And this is why today's session really brings that position back to us on a strategic level, because we have speakers here that will talk locally about some of the initiatives that they are working on in this space. And also, it really covers the, I guess, some of the things that our members want to hear about. So we did roll out a survey only recently where BIM, digital engineering, and digital twins are the top 3 areas that we'll be focusing on this year in terms of our events. So with no further delay, I'd like to welcome our speakers again and again for attending today's session. Very important discussions across the next hour. So thank you for your attention. And I will stop sharing my screen and firstly, introduce our first speaker, Dr. Marie Truelove. So bear with me, and I will just hand over my screen sharing to Marie. Marie, if you can, yep. And I will just introduce you.
Yep,
Great.
I just have to work out how to share.
So while you're doing that, Marie, what I'll do is I will introduce you. So Marie is effectively a speaker we've brought in through our connections. Thank you to a couple of people that are on the webinar today. But Marie is from the CSIRO's Data 61. And effectively, Data 61 is the data and digital specialist arm of Australia's National Science Agency. And they are driving and solving quite important challenges that are occurring through our industry. Using innovative solutions, science and technology, we're actually seeing that there is an uptake of different initiatives occurring for the CSIRO, and effectively Marie leads a team of talented product managers to align some of the processes, etc., that are being undertaken across CSIRO. So with that, I'll pass over to Marie, and I have allowed you to gain ownership of the presenting. Marie, have you?
Yep. So I think I've just shared my screen. Have I shared the right version, everybody?
Great.
Awesome.
Perfect. And I'll mute myself. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Oh, wow, I can see myself. Let me just tab and get where I wanted to be. Thank you. So I'm still sharing the right thing. Thumbs up, everybody. Awesome. I'm just going to keep going. Let me know. Thank you so much. So first, I would like to thanks for being here. It's great to be invited along, and I'm really excited to share just some of my thoughts on, and hopefully that will demystify digital twins and not just bamboozle things even further. But firstly, my introduction. So yes, I'm a product manager or a senior product manager focusing on spatial digital twin at CSIRO Data 61. And also recently I've taken on the role of head of product management, which means that I get to lead a fabulous group of product managers who are embedded in programs all across Data 61. And our role as a product manager is to really try and align development with real customer needs and market needs to achieve the greatest value and impact in a very simple framework. So today, on the theme of demystifying digital twins, I thought I'd share some of the insights from our journey along the way, both contributing to the evolution of Australia's spatial data ecosystem towards digital twin. And this is no means an exhaustive list. I'm hoping I'm keeping myself to 10 to 15 minutes, just to sort of give that high-level view of some of the things that we've been doing along the journey, that hopefully will share how we think about digital twin, how we came to digital twin, and where we're going in the future. So first off, I think it's important to think about, whoops, again, I keep changing. Sorry guys, I keep losing track of screens. So CSIRO's mission, I'm just going to keep moving things. Sorry guys, I'll get back. Here we go. So first up, I thought I'd start with CSIRO's mission is really to solve the greatest challenges with science and technology, but they obviously can't be solved alone. And so we work with like-minded collaborators and partners, and together we know that solving these kind of big challenges for our country and for the planet are underpinned at a very fundamental level by access to data and supporting data infrastructures. And our focus has been on creating data platforms and tools that really enable a diverse range of data sharing and making it accessible to a diverse range of users to both interact with data at a precinct to national to city to national kind of scales. And we want to allow users to interact with, collaborate around, access, visualize 3D and 4D spatial data federated directly from the original data producers or custodians, if that's a requirement to do so. And these data infrastructures have become to be known over time as digital twins. And I think the term digital twin has come because they're no longer talking about just geospatial or spatial data domains. We're talking about bringing together building information models, or BIM, sensor and IT modeling, analytics and simulations, with the ambition to model the world and be connected to it. And spatially enabled or spatial digital twins is to be explicit. It's just to call out explicitly that it's about the geometry is being retained, and also it's positioned in its real world location, or it's geo-referenced is another way of saying that. And I think if you think about that kind of scale of digital twin, it's probably pretty obvious that a spatial digital twin is not a single platform or a single digital twin, but rather it's a connected ecosystem of digital twins. And how that pans out from a technology perspective is there's no one platform to rule them all. We really do have specialized platforms, in particular analytics and data portals and management. It's a whole ecosystem of technologies coming together. So we think to be a spatial digital twin for Australia, or a technology must be able to bring together complex data from a massive and growing ecosystem of data providers. And this ecosystem itself is siloed. It's siloed by domains, by technology and data formats. And the technology must really try to solve these problems of silos to create that value we need, and to enable sort of a more frictionless or less friction, I don't know, way of supplying data from providers to the users who need them to make decisions and gain insights. And because it's an ecosystem and we need to collaborate, the spatial digital twin must also seek to help industry and government and the research sector generate data and develop digital twins in a really cooperative and aligned way. And that's where the role of principles and policy statements and guidance and frameworks and standards all come into play. So we think that our approach has been to collaborate and work with partners to enable both, to enable this ecosystem to come together. But like many of you, I'm sure, everyone starts, I think, this is my hypothesis, starts the digital twin journey from somewhere that wasn't necessarily digital twin, which is why I think we come, sometimes there's this misunderstanding, or we have different ideas about the concept, and we're in different places in the journey and different levels of maturity. So if I just think about Data 61 and CSIRO, for example, digital twin is a concept that's broadly recognised and adopted, but it's everything. It's not just the built environment or infrastructure projects or assets. It really is everything from grains of wheat to water catchments, to law and things that don't even have a spatial dimension at all. And so it really is a broad concept. We're all coming at it from a different direction. So it's understandable in some ways when you think about it in that way, that we're coming from a different place and we might have a different understanding. So where did our journey in particular start? It was with Australian government's open data policy, probably around 2014. And our mission at the time was to unlock the value of government's geospatial data as part of the opening up for public good. And to do this, we adopted principles that look very much like the Gemini principles and ANZLIC spatially enabled principles that came along much later, things like federated, open, accommodating, accessible. And our founding open source technologies, TerraJS and Magda, which we use to develop and maintain Australia's national map and the search of data.gov.au, continue to enable these access to data even today. And we've had a lot of success with this mission. And so today, these founding technologies of our digital twin support hundreds of different use cases for users from both government and industry. And they enable, our open source core enable other organisations globally to adopt and build platforms of their own and enable the same value for their customers and users. So in 2018 is probably when we commenced the next phase of our journey, which was really working with government partners and others and collaborators and stakeholders to really enable the spatial digital twin or spatial ecosystem in a data ecosystem to make that step change to digital twin. And the first part of this was at that time was thinking about it's not just bounded by geospatial data, but to really break down silos. And we've done a ton of work to support data from across a whole range of domains. And the other big part in this early phase was to develop trusted and secure open and shared and closed data sharing. So it's not about open data anymore. And so we've worked with the New South Wales government, Queensland government and Digital Twin Victoria, which Karis, our other panellists, will talk a little bit about more in the moment. Since that time to really start to bring that vision to reality. And the next part of this is it wasn't just about building a digital replica of the digital twin, but what are the use cases to connect the digital twin to the physical world and really increase that maturity and how we might help to proof of concept and prototype those. And so that was another big part of this journey. It included, so the first kind of use case was how might we support more infrastructure project data sharing and reuse. And the example you see on the screen is from one of the projects we did in Queensland, which brought in some of the data from the Cross River Rail, which were received in an IFC format. We had so many learnings from these kind of projects. For example, the maturity of, really detailed things that, lots of small challenges that need to be overcome to enable more frictionless data sharing. Things like most infrastructure project data we received wasn't georeference, which we need for a spatial digital twin. Our experience with IFC was very variable. So for example, there were different ways to represent the same object in an IFC, and which we came to know because in the web context, we need to convert these very heavy, I suppose, files, for want of a different word, into sort of web performant formats like 3D tiles. So lots of great learnings and insights that we are progressing even now into the future. The next sort of big area was how might we support connecting not just an ecosystem of data, but of digital twin services, so predictive analytics, modelling and simulations with users. And I've got two examples here on the screen. So we bring in travel time modelling and flood modelling. And these modelling aren't happening in our digital twin itself for our data platform. They're happening in their own specialised systems. So how might we bring them together into the digital twin? And so some of the challenges and opportunities are probably obvious. So the first challenge is these specialised platforms are not often built with sharing or integrations in an open standards-based way. And so often that becomes a custom job, I suppose. And then the other big one is around, we've had lots of learnings around what's the right level of openness to share data where it's come from a complex modelling system, and how do we ensure that it's been interpreted correctly? Those sorts of issues. And of course, in a digital twin, we were looking to support what-if scenarios for the future. And so this is just a little screenshot or a little video from something we call Scene Editor, and we're really here exploring how we might enable an end user who's not an expert to bring in models that they might have into the digital twin and explore scenarios where they, pre-seek planning scenarios. And you might want to bring in the modelling or the analytics that I showed in the previous example into this as well. And the final example, which is for the future, a connected digital twin, it was really to how do we might bring these data together to support situation awareness and operations use cases. And so 2 examples here was linking building information models with, or building information system data, sensor data, with the models, 3D models, and another structural health monitoring project. And what we learnt here was the critically important role of sensor IT platforms, particularly around, oh, excuse me, I've got a cough, around the aggregation of the data will be really critical. But one of the big challenges was the lack of spatial semantics that come in sensor and IT platforms. When you want to try it, when it comes down to, I'll just put it very plainly, connecting this sensor feed with this particular part of the model, there was no clues on how to present that. And so there's a long way and lots of work for standards to support that interoperability between the different domains of data. And so just to finish up, I hope that I've demystified some of the concepts of, based on where we've come and where we're going and our journey, which has really been about, spatial digital twin has been about that next evolution that builds on the foundation of an open and accessible data platform that can enable benefit for the broader economy. Spatial digital twin is an opportunity to collaborate. In fact, it's a necessity. You can't have one digital twin solve everybody's problem. It really is about a connected ecosystem. And so because of that, we need to continue to advocate and support for nationally harmonised approaches to sharing data and digital infrastructures. And our team personally, we're always continuing to develop use cases, increase the maturity and value of our technology and its way that it connects and represents digital twin, and seek collaborators and partners to implement them. So I'll stop there.
Thanks so much, Marie. And I think, look, you've just reinforced some of the kind of key messages we wanted to take away from today, really. The importance of obviously, taking in the level of expertise from different sectors and different, I guess, data points, which is really important. One organisation or one client or one government can't do it all.
Yep,
and
exactly.
also, some of the challenges really. And I think that's so important, right? Because, we're all trying to be as collaborative as we possibly can. But thank you so much, Marie. We should move now in, I think, the right way to Karis, because, really interesting is that, and thank you so much for being here today, Karis, but I will introduce you before I'll just make sure you can share your screen to start with. But while I'm doing that, I think, one of the key things for us really with this webinar was to really talk about the contextual application of some of these methodologies, and that it is a very much a process-driven outcome rather than one technology to suit the particular problem, which is something we've been debating for a long time in our community. So hopefully, Karis, you can share your screen while I introduce you. Yep, and I'll just quickly give people a little bit of background as to who you are.
Has that come up?
So, yes, perfect.
Thanks.
So Karis is, she's the Director for Digital Twin Victoria, effectively, which is one of the most innovative digital programs underway at the moment across Victorian government. And apparently the Digital Twin Victoria program is recorded at 37.4 million investment by the Victorian government in the application of digital twin technology and spatial innovation. So leading this initiative, really what Karis hopes to achieve is to provide an advanced digital platform to transform the way that we use this data across the built and natural environment. So thank you, Karis, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for having me here. It's really good to have the opportunity to talk about DTV. I kind of can't help but get out there and share the word, because it's pretty exciting. As Rebecca said, we really see this as sort of one of the most exciting projects that's happening across government at the moment. Firstly, just before we start, I'd just like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting today. For myself, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. But first, for a bit of context of where we kind of sit in government, I work in the Department for Environment, Land, Water and Planning, and government's a big space, but I work in Land Use Victoria. And the key thing to know about Land Use Victoria is we are responsible for being Victoria's lead agency in government land administration. So everything from land registry, valuations, surveying, to support the Victoria's Big Build, which is over $110 billion, but also critically also managing our state's foundational spatial data assets. So as you would have seen from Marie's presentation, obviously those foundational data assets are really crucial underpinning for any sort of digital twin. They provide key kind of contextual information upon which you can then put your sort of project-based or localized spatial data sets. But also importantly, the reason that DTV sits in this part of government is because we have a really strong track record of digital innovation and transformation. So we have transitioned land registry and valuation and data services to almost 100% digital. So an enormous transformation in some really quite embedded processes within government. So some really exciting projects, and the digital cadastre modernisation project you'll see there is digitising 3.3 million land parcels to upgrade and uplift the Victoria's digital cadastre. So it's sort of in our DNA. It's what we've been doing a lot of. We've also been pushing the boundaries with our spatial teams, leveraging those foundational data assets that I mentioned earlier. So we've undertaken machine learning projects and in fact launched Victoria's first digital twin in Fisherman's Bend a few years ago. So that was our first sort of attempt, sort of dipping our toe in the water to see to understand better what government's role should be in this space. But firstly, and I think Marie's actually done an awesome job of this, so I probably don't have to go too far into it, but I do like to be really clear about what I mean when I talk about a digital twin. So I'm talking about a spatial digital twin because there are different types and they're not all spatial, but I'm talking about a digital twin that's located in three-dimensional space and time. So you can think of it like virtual Lego or Minecraft or SimCity, for those of you who are in my generation perhaps. But importantly, what they allow you to do is really easily bring together 2D, 3D and 4D data sets so that you can actually ask questions that you just couldn't easily ask before. So you can analyse change through time, like using historic weather data with 3D infrastructure models to predict localised flood impacts. You can monitor the impact of your decisions, like monitoring traffic conditions and road closures to inform emergency vehicle response, or you can even do the classic, which is scenario model, thinking about how to visualise and how your projects and investments are going to change the natural and built form so that you can coordinate with transport and planning. You can actually improve the way that you're engaging with your stakeholders and community. So Digital Twin Victoria, well, Digital Twin Victoria itself, we got into this space. I guess the big question is sort of why did we get into digital twin? Well, we saw there being an enormous opportunity with the digital transformation that was being driven by COVID towards the end of 2020, but then also record investment in infrastructure and construction in our state. And so the opportunity and the potential to use this digital technology and deliver benefits back to government and to our economy were just like a no-brainer from our point of view. So you'll see the aim of Digital Twin Victoria is really creating that collaborative space for government, the community and the private sector to be able to collaborate and share 3D spatial data sets to help them make better decisions ultimately in the long run. And we think, as you can see from the objectives across the bottom, that that's not only going to bring about economic returns by making it easier to work with government, but also greater efficiencies within government. So productivity savings, for example, they've estimated up to sort of like 40% productivity savings through automating different processes, which sounds like a big number. But when you look at a proof of concept that we did that looked at automating building approvals at the start of this year, we took a 7-week process down to 15 seconds. So in that context, suddenly 40% seems actually like a small number. And certainly there are human aspects to every process, and so you don't reduce it entirely down. But it does give you a sense of this sort of quantum of the opportunity and the efficiencies that can be gained when you're looking at these sorts of technologies. So DTV itself, though, I just want to make a bit of a differentiation between the Digital Twin Victoria program and Digital Twin Victoria platform. Now, we see the platform obviously as foundational, and you'll see it along on the bottom there. But our program is really end-to-end, so we're not looking at just creating a platform and providing the data, but also making sure that we're building in applied use cases to really deliver benefits to government and show how this technology can be applied to problems that are experienced by government right now. And I want to take you to give you a bit of sense of what I mean by that. I want to take you through a couple of the highlights. So firstly, the Digital Twin Victoria platform itself, and you would have seen from Marie's presentation some familiar images here. So we have partnered with CSIRO's Data 61 in the development of the platform, and we've been incredibly fortunate to be able to therefore leverage the incredible learnings and understanding that they have already worked on with Queensland and New South Wales. So what it meant is in a very short period of time, we've been able to stand up and connect to an enormous number of data sets, so over 4,000 at this point in time. And the platform itself, so over 4,000 data sets, but I guess the point I'd like to make is, while, as Marie mentioned, we don't see that this platform is just the one platform to rule them all. We absolutely, in a similar vein, see there as being a need for an ecosystem of digital twins. And so crucially, we see the Digital Twin Victoria platform as being a foundational digital twin that supports and facilitates those connections and collaborations between everything from a digital twin of a physical asset, maybe it's a building, all the way through to digital twins of maybe geographic locations, local governments, be they urban or regional local governments. So a real opportunity to sort of help support and provide foundational capability that improves the ability of digital twins to mature, to connect and collaborate. But in Digital Twin Victoria, we're also setting up those foundational data sets. So taking the foundational data sets that already exist and bringing them up into the 3D digital twin world. So we're investing significantly in things like imagery and elevation to create a digital elevation or a terrain model statewide, a 1 metre terrain model. So that sounds a little bit dry, only when you think about trying to place 3-dimensional objects in space, if you're all using different terrain models, they're going to be in slightly different locations. So it inhibits the ability to collaborate and share easily. So it's these sorts of investments in really valuable foundational data sets, which we see as really crucial to kind of create the foundations for Victoria. Equally, we're also looking at the opportunity for machine learning to enable us to actually keep these foundational data sets up to date. You might have seen the release earlier this year of the Map Vegetation Data Set, which is now available in the Digital Twin Victoria platform. And what it does is it provides a statewide repeatable machine learned data set for a data set that otherwise had not been updated for literally 15 years. And 15 years ago, it was a whole lot of people with aerial photography and a pen. So you can imagine the opportunity here for us to be able as a state to provide those foundations and support faster, easier development of this sort of an application of this technology. But as I mentioned before, we also have work streams that are about applied use cases, tangible use cases that address issues for government. And a classic and a well-known pain point for construction projects is underground utilities. So to that end, we're looking at improving the speed and the safety of delivery by improving the management of utilities data. So as those of you who have been involved in these projects might be aware already, most of the time, the millions of dollars that goes into acquiring this data, the data will barely make it out of the consultant's office, and certainly is unlikely to be available or shared into the future projects. So we're looking at how do we fix that? How do we create a situation where the Digital Twin Victoria can support the better, more efficient use of this data, and make sure we're not just doubling up and duplicating every couple of years when we're making changes to infrastructure or in particular locations. And automated approvals. So we're also looking at the application of analytics to reduce approvals timeframes. So I mentioned earlier automated building compliance approvals. So we're looking at how do we use these data sets and this functionality to support automated approvals of simple compliance requirements. So we've done a proof of concept using the small lot housing code. And as I said, we're taking a process that kind of takes weeks at the moment down to literally 15 seconds, with the potential to save, 30 million in benefits back to the economy in a matter of years, because the holdings costs and the costs associated with industry going through that process really have an enormous opportunity to deliver savings back to the economy. The last one that I want to talk to is changes. There we go. Is around the use of digital twins and 3D data to uplift asset management approaches. So we're looking at defining standards and workflows for BIM that will enable easier sharing and access both through our platform and then into asset management platforms. So trying to make sure that the digital assets that we're creating in the project level actually have a long life, that continue to get used, so that they're actually able to support better asset planning, operations, maintenance, and not just the design and construction phase. So you can see digital engineering, BIM, digital twin, they're all so deeply connected. It's very hard to sort of pull them apart. And I hope that you can see that sort of digital engineering processes where you've got projects that create the models that form the foundations of a digital twin. You hydrate them with a bit of real-time data and spatial context and connections to asset documents and photos, and voila, you've got yourself a digital twin. Thank you very much for having me, and yeah, please reach out, get in touch if you're interested in finding out more about DTV.
Thanks, Karis. That was excellent. And you know what? It just reiterates what you just said with, how everybody's like talking about these different siloed technology or process requirements with BIM and digital engineering and the digital twin, but bringing them all together really is the foundation for the success. And, I learned a little bit there about what you guys are doing in more detail as well. So thank you so much. And questions to Karis will feed through at the end. So thanks, Karis. And we'll move on to our final speaker now. And our final speaker for today, and I'll just go to the sharing screen, is Amanda Wiesenbeek. And I hope I pronounced that right, Amanda. But I will allow you to share your screen. And I will introduce Amanda because we're really excited to have her on the session today. She's the Technical Director for Digital Advisory at Mott MacDonald. And what we wanted to do within the context of this webinar was give you, that overarching high-level piece, the application across government, and then really what advisory services are trying to achieve in this space. So we'd like to introduce Amanda, who comes with many, many years of experience in aviation, commercial, residential projects, leading the way in digital across the organisation, in digital advisory, very much at the forefront of digital innovation, and she works really closely with the team to effectively identify emerging areas that help clients understand different aspects of their projects. And some of the stories Amanda and I have shared have been really interesting, but she's really interested in this topic, and we're really excited to have her talk about really Mott MacDonald's position and her position on demystifying digital twins. So thanks, Amanda, all yours.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for having me. I've only got 4 slides, so it'll be nice, quick and short. But what I'd like to do is really just take us up and above and talk about that high level view of what digital twins could potentially be, what they are, and that journey that we've had with digital twins. Now, as we know, before the arrival of CAD, we replicated and designed our environments through manual drafting. We then progressed into the world of BIM, further adding the ability to capture time, cost, facilities operations, sustainability, and so on and so forth. Then came along the smart infrastructure, combining real world and the digital world by means of different technological tools. And it was great to hear Chris and Marie talk about the tools in which they're using within their own digital twins, which is fantastic. Now, usually these tools are also done with an interconnection of sensing, a sensing network of IoTs, AIs, and other, monitoring technologies. This has then led us to the concept of smart cities. And smart cities are the connection of one smart infrastructure to another, creating opportunities like, for example, smart parking, where a driver could be helped to find a parking space and also allow for digital payment at the same time. Now, the elements of connection here are the smart car, which could be driverless, with the smart car park, which is the built infrastructure, and then you have the digital payment method, which could be an app. Now, we then are now traversing into this metaverse. Now, the metaverse, simply put, is how we fit ourselves into that digital world that we've replicated. At the end of the day, we collect a lot of data, let's face it. What we want to do with that data is to be able to make those data-driven decisions. Less emotion, more facts. It is a lot quicker. I mean, how many times have you either driven around and around in a shopping center car park or an airport car park searching for a parking spot, and those green lights haven't really worked? Anyway, moving to the next slide. So you're probably wondering where in this evolution journey a digital twin actually fits in. Well, I'm here to tell you that it fits into all of it. Now, according to the Centre of Digital Built Britain, digital twins are a realistic digital representations of physical built assets, including spaces, structures, processes, and systems. That was then. Now, where we're heading to is digital twins are much more than that. We've evolved from those manual drawings. We're now needing and creating something that is consistent, where data is presented in a consistent manner to support quality decisions, accuracy, precision, and experience. We're after scalable, where it thinks of everything as a network, as a connected, integrated system. So you're not only looking at it in isolation, but also allowing yourself to continuously build and build and build on it. Then you've got accessible, where information is easy to find and trusted. This could be a browser or an app. We're also after something consumable, where the data is stored, accessed, and presented in a centralized platform. Secure and robust data validation and automated processes to reduce errors and improve efficiency. Now, notice how when we talk about digital twins, we no longer talk just about 3D models. It's a lot more than that. It's the context. The word digital twin on its own, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm going to use that word constantly. So by the end of it, I think we'll all be tired of hearing the term digital twin. But the word digital twin on its own doesn't really mean anything these days. Think of an app. What do you want that app to be? Is it a communication app, a fitness app, a banking app, or perhaps even a social media app? A digital twin is similar to the app. It needs a purpose to which it will capture and measure data. We want to make those data-driven decisions, don't we? So our smart devices can now tell us, when we've sat down for too long, or how many steps we've taken over a certain period of time. The digital infrastructure is the smartphone or the watch. That device with all the connected apps which work together to give us that holistic information that allows us to make a much more informed decision. For example, okay, Amanda, you need to stand up now. Oh, and you have a meeting in the city in about 30 minutes. Should you choose to drive, the quickest route is X, Y, and Z. Oh, and don't forget, you need to do your breathing exercises. So all of that information is all connected into the one and presented to me, the user, and allowing me to make a decision, a much more informed decision. Context is what defines a digital twin. What do you want this thing to do? Why do you need it? What value is it going to add to your business? These are only a few of many questions you need to answer to be able to define what a digital twin is to your organization. And it will differ from use case to use case and organization to organization. Digital twins have now become this shiny new thing that everybody wants and may not necessarily understand. And the only way of stopping them from becoming this new shiny thing is by adding context. Purpose, function. What is the data going to be used for? How can we provide security, safety, and also linking it to other elements? In isolation, it's like buying a top-range Tesla, keeping it locked away in your garage. The saying goes, from a consultant's perspective, is don't always jump to the technical solutions before you've actually worked out the context. What do you want your engineer to develop for you? What is your mechanic, creating? But don't worry. If you know you want a digital twin, but can't iron out the why, the how, or when, that's okay. Give me a call. I'll help you figure that out. Now, when we go to the why, well, each organization will have its own reasons for wanting one, or multiple ones for that fact. There'll always be a challenge you'll be trying to resolve, a pain point you want to remove. The what that we talked about earlier needs to tie in with the why. Your leadership team will be more inclined to buy into the concept if you can demonstrate how a digital twin will achieve some of the following. Better outcomes, be it for the organization and the community at large, reduced costs, improved efficiency. And if you're a company CEO, your interest also lies in the ability to reduce risk and at the same time increase profit. Now, I'd like to share with you a very quick 2-minute video of one of our Mott MacDonald digital twin tools. As a global society, we collect a lot of data. That's a known fact. It's what we do with that data to help address the human and organizational factors that counts today. This particular tool, called Moata Rainwise, is currently being used in Bangkok and predicts where they'd get a deluge of water. The combination of IoTs and AI helps predict the short-term future. This is an example for how a digital twin can be consistent, scalable, and consumable. What's the public good? It must have a function, a purpose, and be trustworthy. This is how we tie back to the Gemini principles, but that will be a conversation for another webinar perhaps. And I'll just quickly share this quick video. Don't worry if you can't hear the sound, it's more the reading. Now, to demystify digital twins, in my opinion, is about taking the concept beyond the 3D BIM models. They're about the use of information coming from different data sources and moving towards public good, the likes of your net zero sustainabilities, and at the same time, reducing risk and increasing profit. Now, when we look back at the definition of a digital twin, you can see why context plays such a large part in demystifying them. Yes, you can model a physical asset, you can put sensors into it, but then what? What do you do with it beyond that? The twins that we want to create in today's world are about building a better society, about improving things. It's no longer just about modeling with various dimensions and added to them your 4Ds and your 5Ds. There's more layers that can be added to it, and that's where that scalable component comes in. It's the information and values you can extract from it. It's whether you refine that information, share that information, process that information, so on and so forth. Change for the sake of change isn't necessarily progress. Now, what next? Well, what is next in our evolvement of digital twins? We now have created these multiple worlds. We have a physical world to which we're trying to reclaim and conserve. We have the virtual world, the Metaverse, to which we're increasing virtual experiences. And then we have the smart world, which acts as our testing ground. All of these are connected through data. Now, this is yet another webinar, which I'm sure we're going to have as to the world beyond digital twins, but I'd like to leave things here for now. There's a lot to ponder on, and I thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to many, many more conversations around this concept. Now, none of us are wrong in our approach and perceptions to digital twins. They are what we create for our own uses, as long as we can put context for what we require as an organization. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Thank you. That was excellent. And look, there's so much to discuss as a response to your presentation. I think, there's obviously, all of the points that you've made very much kind of ring true to much of the work that we've been doing over the years with Women in BIM and also across our business. So thank you very much. And yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation. So with that, I'll ask the panelists to now turn on their cameras and their audio, and I will move to our questions panel. We have just over 5 minutes for questions, so I'd encourage you to ask specific questions to our panelists that relate to the work that they're undertaking. And if no questions pop up, I'll add some to the mix. So we'll leave it there for a few minutes. There's a question panel as part of the GoToWebinar dialogue box. So the first question, thank you for your involvement, is to Marie. Marie, again today was an excellent presentation, but effectively the question is, do you, I guess in terms of the different groups and government initiatives that you're involved with, what are you finding is the biggest pain point in the process? So, what is your biggest challenge, or what is one of the biggest challenges that you're finding in the work that you're undertaking?
Great question. The biggest pain point, I could just talk about pain points all day. My job as a product manager. When I'm asked the biggest one, I'm sort of stuck for. I think it comes. So digital twin is all about the future, and Amanda did a great job of painting that it's also not the end. There's all other concepts and ideas coming, like the metaverse, but it's still the fundamentals. I think the silos and barriers to data sharing are still probably one of our biggest pain points, and none of this kind of works unless we can continue to reduce friction in those areas. And I think I'll quote someone, so digital twins are like islands of capability with great vast wastelands in between. I think we've moved beyond that. That was about 4 years ago, but that's where data sharing, I think, can help solve that. Yeah, and the other one I think is it's still data and digital capability. We still have a long way to go as data and digital professionals like women in BIM and others in helping uplift capability to understand and as Amanda pointed as well, and Karis in her presentation, what is the actual questions we're trying to answer with these digital twin and kind of get beyond that hype. So they're the two pain points that I think are almost ongoing and continuing.
Yeah, I mean, look, apologies that my internet's shaky a bit, but the uplifting capability is probably one of my primary focuses in not just the role, my everyday role, really the work that I do with women in BIM, and it's why we run our mentor scheme and why we do all of the great stuff for free, really. So, you know, it's so important. Any other comments from the panel in this with this question?
I think change management is another one, like taking the people through that journey, because there's like as a consultant, I find that even trying to get, you know, the right individuals in one room to agree on something so we can move forward with, you know, with that united goal, that tends to be a huge thing. But just ensuring that there's that change management plan right up at the beginning to allow for even, you know, a change in perhaps culture within an organization, because that's one thing that could make it fail. You can go out there and get the best thing that's for the business, but if your people aren't, you know, partnered with it, you might as well just put it up on a shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I totally agree with that. I think that's a really important thing to address. Change management often gets neglected, I think, as part of these types of processes. So just another question here for directed to Karis, I think. And apologies if you can't hear me too well, just let me know if it's coming through okay. There are effectively several policies and initiatives around the spatial digital twin solution for our differing states, and Data 61, Marie's presentation touched on a couple of those. Obviously, the work that you're doing really is important, but when it comes to, I guess, government collaborating at a national level around these types of things, is there anything that you can provide comment on in that respect? Because, you know, one of the issues with, you know, if we relate it back to BIM and the requirements for BIM or digital engineering, was the differing policies and solutions happening all over the country and, in fact, all over the world. So, yeah, what's your position on that, Karis?
Yeah, look, totally agree. And it absolutely, I think collaboration, coordination, the application of standards, it's just as important nationally as it is within a state. So I think the sort of challenge, I think both Amanda and Marie kind of have sort of talked to, of working collaboratively across the sector. It exists as well at the national level. So we're certainly participating primarily through ANZLIC. So the Australian New Zealand Land Information Council is the key interjurisdictional governing body in this spatial area. So our chief executive is the chair of ANZLIC. And that's definitely a vehicle that we're looking at to both champion and provide leadership and opportunity for that sort of collaboration, because you're right, in order to be really effective, we need to be thinking about not only trying to solve the problem in our own backyards, so in my case in Victoria, but thinking what are the implications and the synergies and potential learnings that we can get from other jurisdictions. And there are others that have gone ahead of us. So New South Wales has obviously done a whole lot of work in digital twin space, you know, ahead of us. But equally, you know, there are also jurisdictions that are just starting their journey now. So yes, it's really important. It's something that's absolutely on the priority list for us, and we see both the value and the need to ensure that we're collaborating and effectively across Australian government.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's a big pain point for a lot of people. I mean, you know, obviously we're trying to consolidate our messaging, and particularly for, you know, some of the young people coming into the industry and their problems with understanding, you know, these varying solutions, I guess, across our country is a real challenge. But look, we have run out of time, and, you know, I encourage everybody to to ask questions and to hopefully engage with us, because what what we're doing as part of our Women in BIM webinar series this year is really focusing on the digital twin outcome. And what the digital twin outcome really hopes to achieve is to demystify what it actually is, and then moving into more around the technologies and then links to smart cities and the smart city initiatives that are starting to pop up all over the world, really. So thank you to our panelists, and we will provide you with a link to their details and maybe their slides at the end of the session or in the next few days. So thanks again for your attention, and yeah, I look forward to our ongoing conversations. So thanks, ladies.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.